You are now watching By the Minute, where we highlight unsolved cases across the nation. Speedway, Indiana. November 17, 1978. I remember cranking up the grill at my first job. Oh, the experience of making your own money. For kids making an earnest buck, lives were cut short as they were abducted from their workplace.
Chef murders planted a huge question mark in the minds of almost everyone in the community. Why kill Ruth Ellen Shelton, Daniel R. Davis, Jane Freet, and Mark Flemings? Why dump their bodies in Johnson County? Things have changed. This is the site where the tragedy began. It was a burger chef, it became a Hardee's, and now it stands empty. But one thing has remained constant during this past decade. The right suspect remains at large.
That burger chef quadruple murder stands out as the most alarming example of mayhem in our city that hasn't been solved. Everybody knows about it, everybody knows how serious it was. It represents not the best in police work and not the best in terms of violence in our community. It's a very frustrating crime that looks now as if it will go unsolved forever.
Jane Freet, Ruth Shelton, and Daniel Davis were all scheduled for work that night. Mark Flemings was called in to cover another worker's shift. Employees that night were asked to stay later to clean and prep the kitchen for the next day's shift. Jane, being the assistant manager, took charge of the team that night. A coworker knew that the team would be working late that night. The coworker sees that the lights are still on and Jane's car is not there. There he would find things at the burger chef in Speedway completely off. Police were called to the restaurant, where they would find the register had been robbed of $581. Police believed that the teenagers committed the robbery together and would come back home, eventually. Cops then told the manager to proceed with business as usual and to clean up the crime scene. 2 days later, cops would realize how that decision was one they'd regret for decades to come. November 19, 1978, cops were called to a remote area in Johnson County, Indiana. Hikers would find the bodies of the 4 missing burger chef employees. Ruth and Daniel were both shot execution style. Jane was found stabbed, with the blade still stuck inside of her heart. Mark was determined to have died from the results of blunt force trauma, after being beaten and choked with a chain. Police realized that this was not a petty theft crime but a robbery, abduction, and a quadruple murder investigation. The burger chef crime scene was already compromised after police decided to not investigate other avenues outside of the petty theft. The police then produced a theory. One of the employees went to take the trash out and was confronted by 2 or more men who planned to rob the burger chef that night. One of the employees then recognizes the robbers, and all employees were abducted and taken to the remote area where they were later killed. Who would hurt these 4 young kids? How was it possible that 4 people were taken away from their workplace? The heat was on the police to solve this case. While police ignored the fact that purses and jackets were left at the crime scene the night of the abduction, the following day they found Jane's car was abandoned and evident of foul play. Police then run into another hiccup later in the investigation as they realized the bodies were repositioned for crime scene photographs.
There's nothing I would have done differently. We conduct our investigation according to standard procedures that our department and other agencies would use. There's nothing we would have done differently, except we'd like to have the answer.
Answers is what the victims' families want and what the public wants, but the question mark remains, perhaps forever. Derek Thomas, Channel 6 News.
While some mistakes may warrant us to ask questions like how or why, someone out there knows the answer to who committed these vicious crimes to these innocent kids. Until then, this case remains unsolved. By the minute. Take a moment to review sketches and clay models of the potential suspects seen near the first crime scene. The Indiana State Police are focusing this investigation on a group of individuals that were committing restaurant robberies at the time. Please submit all tips to the Indiana State Police. Jane Freet, Mark Flemons, Ruth Shelton, and Daniel Davis went to work at a fast food restaurant and were never able to see the next day. Their cases remain unsolved, and the Indiana State Police need your help solving this crime. Until then, these victims' families continue to suffer, by the minute. Thank you for watching By the Minute News. Like, subscribe and comment for more true crime content.